Thanks for joining me. This lab session is entitled JMeter Thread Group Lab Part 2. We are starting this part of the thread lab where we add another thread group to the test mix. This will help you see what I'm talking about with regard to parallel testing of the thread groups. I then will run another test, a sequential test, by turning on the setting in the test plan options. Okay, here we are back at the WebTours performance test script, and we see that there are 3 thread groups. That's how we left it on the last test, that we had the setup thread group, the teardown, and the log in, log out. Now we're going to add yet another thread group. Let's choose the registered thread group. I want to first activate it or enable it, and there we are. So now we have 4 thread groups that are going to run when we kick off this test. And in the registered thread group, it's going to start up, have the roughly same delay as the log in, log out. So I'm going to change that just a bit so you can see. I want that, instead of it waiting for 30 seconds, let's cut that in half. Let it start up in 15 seconds. So even though the sequence right now should be log in, log out, and register, actually they should start at the same time, but the register will actually start with the users, ramping up the users a little sooner. All right, if I click it, now you see that it's going to start sooner. Let's see how that operates. So we have the 4. We go to the view results. Let's clear the output. Okay, we should be ready to run. Let's save, and we kick off the run, and then I'm going to, after I kick it off, I'm actually going to do the same thing I did before to save some time. I will come back when the run is completed. Let's start. That was not what I intended to do. Okay, it finished, and you can see on the screen right now some of the flight pay, those are the reservation creation processes. And so those were the last part that came from the teardown thread group. And if I scroll up a little bit, you see a bunch of TC logins. Those came from the login, log out thread. And if I scroll up a little further, we should see some of the, where are you? If we don't get to the end at the beginning, TC login, not seeing it yet. We should, I'm looking for now the register. We may have gotten too much in order to be able to see that at the beginning. That's the way it's looking. Okay, so we're not seeing that. I can give you a better idea, but again, I assure you, I watched it. I saw the registration. The registration actually process started sooner, started seeing TC registers because we started it in 15 seconds as opposed to a 30-second delay. So basically what happened was we saw the setup process occur first by itself, then both the log in, log out, and register started, but the register processes started first, then both the log in and register threads were running, and then the register completed, and the log in, log out still had some processes going on for roughly another 15 seconds. And then finally, the teardown process started, which you saw at the end. So that's roughly how that processed. Let's take a look at the summary report, see if that tells us any more. You can see we had like 22 users identified for log in, log out. For the others, we had 5 or 8. And you'll see where the the transaction or process for canceling, that ran by itself because it was a part of the setup thread. And the flight pay, that ran by itself because it was in the teardown. The two that ran together for part of the time, those you can see, they created quite a few samples or iterations of the user processes, whether it was a login or log out or a registration where it's creating a brand new user. So that process, in order for both of those to run for a minute at full capacity, or the total number of 22 users apiece, then it took 200, over 200, almost 300 samples or iterations to occur. So this turned out to be a decent stress test for those processes. Before we run this test again, this time with sequential processing of the thread groups, especially the thread groups we're talking about is the one for the login, log out, and the register. Notice the standard deviation, over 700 for both of those. We want to see that go down, and that's standard deviation is indicating that we have a wide range of response times for those two processes. Let's see if that changes significantly or hardly at all. Let's find out. All right, so what we do, we go over here to the test plan, and down here we want to check the run thread groups consecutively. In other words, one at a time. So we turn that on, and then we shouldn't have to make any further changes. Those same 4 thread groups are going to run, but this time they should all run sequentially. Let's see what happens. Let's go to the results tree, clear the output, and now we're ready to run. Let's begin that, and I'm going to go away and come back. The test is completed. It ran in sequence, just like I told you before, that it was going to run the setup first, then it ran the login. So we saw all of the login, log out process run, and then the register, and then finally the teardown, which recreated, and you can see the flight pay transactions or processes that ran there. If I scroll up a bit, you should see some of the register. There they are. And it's just registered by itself. And then once it gets through the register, when it started the register, it had finished the log in, log out. And we probably won't see it. No, we won't. But before the register was the log in, log out. If we look at the summary report, we see it actually reached more than almost 400 register and over 300 for login. And we noticed that the standard deviation are down to way under 700, more like 221 here, and the register 153. So that's much better. Therefore, the response time was not all over the place like it was on the first one. So we didn't have a stressful test here. There had some stress, but not a significant amount. And of course, we didn't get any errors. It still ran fine. So that gives you a little bit of a look at running when if we choose that we don't want all the stress to occur, we could just run the thread groups in sequence. But that may not be the amount of stress you're wanting to achieve, and so therefore you would want it to run in a parallel mode, but you've got still control with these thread groups. And when you've got thread groups like the ultimate thread group, that thread group can really help for you to see how the users and processing will be distributed across the test time. Thanks for listening. My time has ended for this session. I thank you for yours. Join me in the next video.